the Citizens for Growth, for Managed Growth, for hosting and inviting us to present tonight. It's a great honor to have that, to talk to community folks. And one of the great things about all of this library stuff is I've got to reconnect with some good old friends I hadn't seen for years, and I got to meet some great new friends, and definitely went to some areas of Winter Park I didn't know were part of Winter Park through this process. So it's been a really enlightening period for me. So tonight the agenda is, and the purpose is just to kind of explain the next steps of where we are and how we're going to move forward. And so we have Randy Knight, the city manager of Winter Park, and Marina Neese, who is the new president of the Board of Trustees for the library. And so they're both going to talk about their processes. It's going to be a short presentation. And then most of the evening is for you all to ask questions. And that's ask me or Randy or Marina. So I hope that we have great citizen participation in all of this. I want to recognize some folks who are decision makers in this process. I did see Commissioner Weldon back here. And then I don't know if there's any other mayor commissioners here. Oh, there's Carolyn just walked in. I should say Commissioner Cooper before home. And then Board of Trustees for the library. Are there any in here? There, and a couple back here. These people are important because they're also in the decision making of what happens at the library. So as the city commission is really into the money, but the programmatic and what goes inside of it, and they have a great determination. So questions and concerns ought to also be addressed to the Board of Trustees. And then you also have the selection committee. I know Randy's on the selection committee. I don't know if there's anybody else here. So today was the day for the people who want to be the architect designers to submit their proposals, and maybe we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. The library was nice enough to pass out this little flyer. Just in case Marina doesn't do it, I'll do it again. But they're going to have some community meetings, 3 in May, to talk about the programmatic. I hope the attendance for that is as good or better than what we have here tonight. I think it's really important that you all get involved and let the library folks know what you're looking for in a new library. I think it's critical. This kind of turnout through the regular process would have been even greater, I think, if we had done that. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Randy. Randy's going to talk about the city's process.
Thank you, Michael. It is a pleasure to be with you this evening. As I said, it's going to be a fairly short presentation. The main purpose is to hear from you, but I'm going to walk you through the process I see going forward and where we are today with everything. So we'll start with the timeline. And as Michael mentioned today, the architects submitted their proposals and wanting to be involved in this exciting project. And we had 14 proposals from all over the country, and I've got to read them all before next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, the committee comes together for the preliminary ranking, and then we'll rank them and then invite a selected number of those, usually somewhere between 3 to 5 of those, to come give oral presentations, and that'll be taking place on May the 12th. We've already begun some of the preliminary work. We've begun soil borings on the site, just to make sure everything's okay before we design a building on the site. We want to make sure you don't have any problems underneath it that would prevent it from going there. We're getting ready to begin the traffic study portion of it, and as well as the survey work of the entire site. On May 23rd, the recommendations of the selection committee will go to the city commission for the architect, and the city commission will select who will design the project. And then we'll negotiate a contract with that firm, and assuming that all works out. They'll begin their work in the June timeframe and spend the rest of this calendar year really in that design phase. That design phase will include public meetings, to hear from the public about design concepts. As Michael mentioned, the programmatic part's going to start in May, as they're going to be listening to what the community wants to see out of the programming for the library. The architects will also be involved in that process, because the programs help design the internal part of the building. So that'll be an important part of that process. So everybody's input's important into what we want to accomplish with this new facility. And then as the design gets further along, somewhere around that 60% design phase is when we'll know what a true cost of this project will be, and we'll be making decisions then on how much of a bond issue to issue. As you know, the voters approved up to $30 million. That does not mean the city has to issue $30 million worth. And the commission's made it very clear to us that they would like to see this project come in well under that number. So we'll be working towards that. And at some point in the late summer, early fall, the commission will be making a decision on how much of a bond issue to go forward with. And then, once it's designed, the commission will have to approve that final design before we go out to bid. And this says November, December, bid the construction project out. I was talking with some architects, and it'll be, they figure it'll be in the November timeframe before the design is done, but the construction documents will still have to be done. So it may be further into the January, February timeframe before we're ready to bid out for construction. And then just a point of reference, December 20th is the last booking in the existing Civic Center. So we stopped taking bookings in the Civic Center back when it looked like that was going to be included in this project. And so that's the last one that's booked. So beginning of January, that building will be available to be demolished, assuming that's where we are at the time. There's been a lot of talk about walkability, and so I wanted to just present this. The blue circles to the right are quarter mile, half mile, 3/4 of a mile from the existing building. The yellow circles on the left, a little bit tough to see, but are from the proposed site. And just to give you a reference of how many people live within those quarters, within a half a mile of the current site, there's 2,700 residents, and with a half a mile of the new site, there's 2,900 residents. And within 3/4 of a mile of each site, there's almost 4,900 residents of the current site and 6,800 residents from the new site. And that does not include the patio that was just built. It's got another 300 residents in it. So both sites are very walkable. Obviously, what makes less people live near the current library site is a lot of that half a mile and 3/4 of a mile is lakes. And so we did not count the fish in this process. Only the ones that could read. The school of fish. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Civic Center, and then we'll turn it over to Marina to talk about the library side. But many of you were here in 1986 when we built the existing Civic Center, and as you may recall, behind that Civic Center wasn't the beautiful park that it is today. It was a dump, and I mean literally not a legal dump, but it was a place where a lot of people dumped a lot of things, and we pulled out cars and tires and batteries and you name it. It was all buried back there in what is now the lake. And the city went in well after the Civic Center was built and developed the park that's there today. And the pond that is out there was all man-made. It was lowland, it was swampland, and we dug it out and made the pond that's there today. So I want to talk a little bit about what it is we hope to accomplish with the new event center. And you notice we changed the name from Civic Center to Event Center, and that's because that's really what this is used for. It's not used for a lot of city type events. It's used for a lot of weddings and parties and those types of things. So some of the things we hope to obtain in this new building is better connectivity to technology, an improved experience for the guests that are there. That building has been very successful. It's booked almost every weekend. It makes about $287,000 a year and costs about $287,000 a year to operate. It's a break-even facility. There's nothing, nothing terribly wrong with it. From a competition standpoint, we've gotten behind the Lake Marys of the world that have built new ones in the last decade, and so a lot of who we used to rent to now goes to some of these newer facilities. So ours is what you would call kind of a middle of the road to lower end rental facility, which there's a market for, but we're not attracting that just a little bit higher level rentals. In the new buildings today, you see a lot of things like being able to have different lighting options when you rent a facility, a different chandelier, different color lighting, that type of thing. So the newer buildings all have those type of things. And I don't know if you've seen these, I don't know what the GOBO stands for, but it's these projectors that you can project up corporate images and different images on the wall, and so those types of things as an enhancement to different type of corporate parties or weddings even. As with any building, you get in there and you realize, man, we sure could use storage. But if you've ever had an event at the Civic Center, a big event, and they've had to break out new tables or new chairs in the middle of an event, they're all under this, that stuff's stored under the stage. And if you've got tables already set up over there by the stage, it's a difficult to do. So one of the things we want to accomplish is a better organized storage and as well as more of it. Obviously, a modern feel, larger ballroom, and better use of space. And then the ability, the concept is that we'll have meeting facilities within the library as well as in the event center, and the ability to use some of the smaller rooms in the library and kind of co-use. The library can use the big ballroom, that type of thing, and be able to jointly use those, which we can't do jointly today in separate buildings. So those synergies are another reason we're looking at this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marina for her to talk about the library component.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. We welcome the opportunity to share a little bit. If you're okay? Is that better?
Yeah, good.
Sorry, I wanted to be able to see that, but I guess I'll look here. Okay. Thank you. I'm a resident of the city of Winter Park since the early 70s, and many of you know that I have a strong passion for giving back to the community. When I joined the board of the library a couple of years ago, I had no idea I'd be standing here before you today. And so I know a lot about some of the library, but not as much as I think all of us would like to know together. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we plan to go forward. Michael said that there were two things that were on his mind, representative of perhaps the concerns and questions that are here tonight, and those were the fundraising component of the library and also our programmatic goals. So I wanted to take a minute to review briefly that we've had a lot of work done by a lot of citizens, and I hope that many of you participated in our task force meetings. We had a library task force that was appointed by the commission. They conducted 27 90-minute public task force meetings over an 18-month period before they got to the recommendations. There were 5 community forums, 2 commission workshops, and 4 commission meetings. And during that process, one part of what we did as the library looked at the user needs and transportations. We researched international standards and national standards and best practices. And we consulted with a number of technical experts. And some of that material found its way into the task force report. When we talk about what the Library of the Future will be, we're really talking about 2 things. The facility that is owned by the City of Winter Park and the operations that are conducted by the Winter Park Public Library Association. And we are run by the volunteer board. We operate the library in partnership with the city. And we, with the city's blessing and partnership back, work on the program side of what we offer. And so for us, from the perspective of the staff and the board, the things that we look at to have in a library and that we imagine in this wonderful facility that we are excited to build include programs that help young people with literacy and reading, a fundamental component of all libraries. We're looking at dedicated computer and technology labs. We're looking at the having of business center space so that people can come and conduct some of their business work in the library, just like you see them doing at Starbucks. And we are looking for creative spaces where individuals can come together to collaborate and to create things, whether it's for a school project or for entrepreneurs who come together. We're seeing a wave of young people doing a lot of entrepreneurial activity, creating new applications for the smartphones and developing new technologies. It is our hope that we can incubate some of that in our new creative maker spaces. We're also looking to honor the history of this great town. There's going to be a local history center. We already have a nice history collection. We want to see that continue to grow with the history that we continue to build. One of the loves that the library knows of is lifelong learning. We all know how important it is to stay vibrant and be active all our lives, and many of you are here because you share those values. And then we are looking for general meeting spaces where corporations and individuals can choose to get together and have time for whatever purpose they might need. We are in the process, and we slipped out some pieces of paper, and it's a good thing because I don't always read the screens well. We are hosting 3 sessions in May. We did this deliberately on an effort to get people before the summer comes, and also to kind of, pardon me, beat the city to getting some information for the architects. And our thought was that we would host a session on 3 different kind of time frames. So for those who can come in the evening and evening hours work best, we have a session on Thursday, May 5th. For those who can do better on a Saturday morning, we invite you to stop by on your way to or from the farmer's market. And then we have a Friday, May 13th. 13th is a lucky number for those who disagree. We're going to do noon to 2:30. And those sessions are going to be partly educational and partly operational feedback. So we will talk about what we understand the operations to be and what we understand the programming needs to be. I keep saying a hand. That's not a question. Okay. So I keep. I hope we will have an interactive session. That there will be some exchange of ideas, exchange of information, and lots of feedback for us to collect and go forward. That won't be the only time that there will be public involvement in setting the tone of the new library. There will be some time that the Aspen Institute will take in June and come down for a program that they will get input from our community and from a panel of people that have been recommended to them. And then again, I think Randy's talked about the city will have further public forums as we get further into the hiring and using of architectural services. Let me talk a little bit about the fundraising process. I could talk about this for a long time. I'm a former fundraiser, and if time permitted, I would be talking with each of you about what that entailed. Fundraising is an art and a science. You know that this board, and we have several members here today, thank you all for being here tonight. Our board has committed to raise $2.5 million to turn over to the city, and we know that we are determined to do that. We are actually in what we call a silent phase. We are finishing up what is called a feasibility study, and that is where the feasibility of a project and the support that will come for it is studied and reported back. And then we evaluate that and go forward with a specific plan. We'll hire a consultant to help us do a campaign. That's a traditional part of running a campaign. And then we will go out and solicit actual campaign contributions. The truth is there's a silent phase that happens first, and then there's a public phase that happens second. We are in what we call the silent phase. We don't talk about it a lot, but that's because if I was going to go to Michael Poole today and ask him for $1 million for the library, he would want the privacy of some time to think about that, about what terms he might make those gifts upon, how long it would take him to make that payment, and whether you make it in stock or cash or maybe donate some real estate we could sell. Those kinds of considerations go into every gift, and so it is difficult for me to share, and out of respect for our donors, I cannot and will not share who we are talking to, but I will commit to you that we have already begun that dialogue and had some very favorable responses. So I am very confident that we will meet our $2.5 million goal, and that we will honor our promise to the city and to all of you and to the rest of the citizens of this great town. Once we get past our silent phase, there will be a public phase. We will look for the enormous enthusiasm and commitment of all of your shining faces that are in this room tonight. I think I just went past the last screen. So with that, I think we're ready to take questions, and I'm not sure if you want to hold this and hand it over, or how you want us to go. Okay, great.
So, a couple of housekeeping things. There's some water if you get thirsty. So there's some water bottles around the corner over there. We have a microphone set up here. So if you have a question, please come over there so that way people can hear you better. And I failed to mention people said, Michael, I can't believe that you were against, this bond referendum, that you're up here sharing the podium, with the city manager and Marina. And it was my idea, because I was asked to do this, and it was supposed to be quote about the Save Our Library effort. And I immediately asked the person who asked me, said, I'd really like to invite the library in the city to participate with me. Thankfully, I have two great resident friends now, and Randy's been a longtime friend, Marina and I just met, and they had no hesitation in sharing. So let's be respectful as we ask questions. We have disappointment and we have joy in the room, right, depending upon where you are, but that doesn't mean we can't share thoughts and conversations in a nice, respectful way. So.
A question. As we look at the library of the future, and I'm ready to write my check, let's say, but I want to know how our library is going to compare and exceed what is existing out there. Is it Portland? Is it Austin? Is it Savannah? Is it something from Toronto? Something from Japan? We talk about technology. We talk about civic engagement spaces. So tell me, as you build the vision, so I can understand it, how we are going to exceed expectations and break the mold.
It's not mine.
We're going to have you come lead the session and tell us what your expectations are, so at least we know what we're setting the standards at. But the truth is, when we go through the community visioning process, we will have a great understanding of the specifics of the program. The architects, and I have not read the RFP, so I don't know this side of the equation, but they were, the pool from which applicants was sought included those who had experience with other libraries. So we are hoping to gain from their knowledge. We are in partnership, we think, with the Aspen Institute, and they are known for bringing some very helpful information to us. The Aspen Institute actually is looking to work with 5 libraries, and we are one of the ones that they have selected. We're waiting for them to make that announcement. But that is a very vital piece of information that you should have, because it does go to the heart of the matter. What does a 21st century library look like? They were funded, I think, by, and I could be wrong, so please bear with me, I think they were funded by Bill and Melinda Gates with the intention of helping them define the best of libraries in the future. So we think we have some strong partnerships. We look for community involvement. We hope that the architects selected do in fact possess the knowledge that they represent, and that we will have an outstanding library that is unique and appropriate to this community. It's not an effort to copy someone else's, it's really what's best for us. Randy?
And to add to that, one of the things that we learned going through the process with the task force and talking with other libraries and people from all around the country was flexibility was key. The library of the future is going to be an evolving creature, always has been. But what we have is an inflexible infrastructure currently. The need to be able to move walls and the ability to move technology around, have raised floors so that you can get wires to wherever you need it within the facility is part of what is needed in a new library. And so flexibility was one of the key words all through the process, to be able to adapt to whatever's thrown at us in the future, because we might be able to see 5 years in the future, but technology's changing so fast today that I don't know if I'm supposed to be on Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat or, I mean, it's all way beyond me. And I see a lot of people in this room that are my age, And we're building this for my grandkids and your grandkids, not really for us. And so we're trying to build something that will be able to adapt to them throughout the future.
Good evening. I'm all for an improved library, but I'm very disappointed that you're choosing to destroy a beautiful, beautiful park, one of the last very large, great open spaces. The Rachel Murrah building now is very secluded at night. It's beautiful from the type of glitzy, glamorous affairs you want to attract to a library. I would think a location like City Hall would be much more amenable, and also for the people within the community. People can walk to their restaurants and bars after the events. That is one of the last good open spaces on the west end here, and I just don't see how a new library, then you're going to want to show it off with lights at night, and it'll ruin everything. I believe it will be a traffic cluster mentioned over there. It's bad enough as it is already without anything in it, and I thought the bond referendum was for the library, and it seems suddenly like, yes, the library at the park has been improved, and I think it's unconscionable to take from people beautiful green space when there are so few left, and put this monstrous building there. Thank you.
Thank you. That was talked about a lot by the task force, and we looked at the library, we looked at the City Hall site, we looked at the existing site, we looked at the post office site, we looked at a whole bunch of sites. Ultimately, the entire task force settled on that site as being the best location, and because of the way it will embrace the park and interact with the park. And so you see a lot of great libraries around the country that are in parks. Libraries are a good partner with a park. Imagine your kids playing lacrosse or soccer practice out there, and you have little siblings that, you want to take them into the library while they're practicing. I mean, the ability for it to interact with the park is part of what attracted the task force to it. As far as the green space, that park is 1,250,000 square feet. This building will take up an additional 10 to 12,000 square feet of the green space. The parking garage is going to be where the existing parking lot is. Now that's an additional structure. I'm not trying to mislead anybody. That's an additional structure that'll be on that corner. But
Trees are going to have to come down. That is the dead.
We need to be respectful.
yes, the tree. I mean, anytime you build a building anywhere, I mean, trees are going to come down. Absolutely, and trees are a renewable resource. You can plant new trees, and they will grow up around the new building. It is a shame when you got to take down a 40, 50-year-old oak tree. I mean, that's absolutely that will be a loss. But again, it's one of those things. We looked at the City Hall site, and and so what you have around the library then is a bunch of streets, and no real chance to interact with the outdoors as part of that library experience. So that was a lot of what went into the task force thinking. The task force originally wanted it on the other corner, the northeast corner of the park, and then there were a lot of people who came out and said, well, now you're blocking the view of the park from two sides. And so they were encouraged to go back and look at it in conjunction with the Civic Center. And so when they came back then, that's when it was joined with the Civic Center to combine the two projects.
Thank you. I'm here because I received emails giving me the impression that this was a meeting about Save Our Library. And I was hoping that would be the case. Obviously, it's not. There's no chance that our library can be saved by what I'm hearing today. That's not my question. I have more, but you can respond to that. I can continue later.
You can ask any question about the Save Our Library effort. That's open for discussion. I'm after the same thing. Marina and Randy know that, and so do the commissioners and mayor, because I've already been to the commission to speak about that and have written emails about that issue. So I'm after that same target of saving our library. I don't like the MLK spot. Everybody knows that, who's been around me and has read my material. And it's not just because I went downtown, I just don't like people taking green space. The calculation that Randy talks about is, I think, maneuvered a little bit. I think it's a lot more green space than is led to believe, but it's how you do calculations, and I deal with numbers all the time, so I know how to make numbers work in my favor. And I think that's what's happened here. But it's not so much about the numbers, it's about the green space. So there is a continued effort of trying to figure out how to be constructive in this process, but at the same time not give up the hope.
Okay, if you want to talk numbers, my underlying suspicion that still continues is that the real reason for all this is because Rollins College, Al Fontaine wants to take that property. And I want to know, is that money, that comes to the city by the sale of that property, going to go against the cost of this new event center / library that I'm going to be paying for the rest of my life?
Those are two questions, so I'll let Randy talk to what happens with any money that would come from the sale, but let me address the first one. So in disclosure, my wife works for Rollins College, and I sit on the board of the Crummer School. So there's a lot of reasons for me, and I'm a donor to Rollins College and the Hamilton Bolt School. So there's a lot of reasons for me to have been on the other side of the 4 bonds, but I'm against it. And I challenged all of my Rollins friends and connections in this process. I talked to as many people in the higher executive office and the board of trustees that I could get to. And I don't believe in the conspiracy theory. I think it's a great one, and I could write a novel about it. But I have never been from the beginning a believer of that conspiracy. I do believe that Rollins College will be a bidder if we do put it up for sale. And they have made no bones about it for years, maybe even a decade or more, that they would want this property. So I know that that's a fact. I know trustees who voted against the bonds but wouldn't come public because they're on the library. They're the trustees for the Rollins, they want to come out against the organization. But I just, my rhetoric on the issues was always never to raise that because I didn't think it was realistic. But they do want it, and just like I might want it if it ever came up for sale. But it's not, they did not do what they wanted, the library. You go back to 2001, I think, is when the library wanted to build a 60 to 90,000 square foot building at the corner of Morris and Denning, where the old state building was. So it goes way back. We go back 16 years for a big
As far as what would happen if the commission sells that building, they haven't decided what to do with the money. They have the full right to buy down the bonds with it so that the bonds would be less, or they could use it for another project that they think the city needs, but that decision hasn't been made. If you saw, I don't know if it was the last meeting or meeting before last, I made a presentation to the commission on all the city-owned properties, and my recommendation was move City Hall to the library site. So I mean, this has not been sold to Rollins. If the city does put it out for sale or land lease, there would be a public process and there'd be bidders taken. It is likely that Rollins would be a high bidder in that process. The property is zoned R4, so it's zoned to be residential, either townhouses or condos. So, that it would take a rezoning to do something other than that. But a decision has not been made, one, to sell it, nor has a decision been made that if we do sell it, where the money would go.
I won't vote against it.
Well, I think many of you know that I'm a former mayor of Winter Park, and I still follow activities of the city fairly closely. Most of the time I agree with what the city does. Sometimes I don't. I express my opinion and then move on. This project, however, is a little bit different. The reason it's different is because for some reason, many people think I still have some influence down the city hall. So they talk to me about the project, and I hear, and I have to say that when people talk to me, I'm not counting the people on the library board, the library staff, members of the task force, but other people. Only one person who will remain nameless, only one person essentially agrees with where the library is going to go. No one else I've talked to agrees to it. Not a single person. Now, there may be some people in this room that do agree with it. I don't know, I haven't talked to them.
If there are, can you talk to Joe, please?
But the reason I bring this up is because I think this whole process has been moving ahead too fast. And the reason I say that is I'm going to give you 3 examples of projects that I was involved in from the beginning to the end. One was this building, which we get a lot of confidence on. It took 7 years of discussion and paper fiddling before we came up with an acceptable plan that we actually built. I'm sorry, I said 7 years, 10 years, 10 years. The Park Avenue project, which when we first started it, people were very nervous what we were going to do with the jewel of Winter Park. And we talked about it for 10 years. Not late for spring. 10 years we talked about that process.
And you may recall that 57% of the voters voted against doing that project.
Sorry?
57% of the voters voted against bricking Park Avenue and widening the sidewalks.
Yes, yes, but they were later convinced on that, because we came up with some good reasons.
We did it without asking the voters the second time.
The Sunrail project took 21 years. Now it's involved in I think the task force did a great job in giving the reasons why we need a new library. Great. But the location of it is a big problem for me and for many of the residents. One of the reasons I think it's such a big problem is that the library is an integral part of the central downtown area that makes Winter Park what is Winter Park. Now, you can take the library away, you can show statistics on walkability and all that, that's okay. But once you start taking away, cutting away from the fabric that makes Winter Park what it is, you have a real problem. We talk about other cities. Sure, there are lots of other cities that have their libraries away from the center of the town, but they're not Winter Park. You never look. I think that we should slow this process down, give the community a chance to express their views, where they think the library should be located. We've had some citizens already that have made suggestions on this that I think are workable. I don't know from an engineering point of view, because I'm not an engineer, but I think there are items that we ought to look at, and we shouldn't be rushing ahead. I would rather take time and do it right rather than do it quickly.
I always seem to follow Mayor Terranova, and he's tough act to follow. I too am opposed to putting a new library on the park. I am reminded when I was a child growing up, and we had what we used to call empty lots. They were just waiting to be developed, and you went out with your friends and played in them. MLK Junior Park is not an empty lot. It is not a piece of green space waiting to be developed. And I hope that we can find another option. Speaking of which, and I wrote it down because I wanted to get it right. One of my personal heroes is a gentleman named Gene Kranz, and some of you may have heard of him. Some of you might have even known him. He was the flight controller on the ill-fated Apollo 13 mission, which ran into such terrific trouble. And he said, "Failure does not exist in the lexicon of a flight controller. The universal characteristic of a controller is that he will never give up until he has an answer or another option. Failure is not an option, and I hope we as a community can move forward to find another option for our needed library." Thank you.
Hello. In the year, no, it wasn't a year, it seemed like a year, that I was running for mayor, which by the way, to this day, remains one of my best experiences in my life. I love doing it, and everything is okay. But people would ask me, what's your position on the library? And I said, I have great confidence in the task force. And I'm not one who believes in conspiracy theory, and I think this was a lot of hard-working public servants who did a very good job, and I appreciate what they did. That's my first point. Secondly, my husband and I were part of the, whatever, I forgot the term that you used, the silent, whatever that was. Someone from the library called and said, could someone come and talk to you about the new library? This was about 6 weeks before the vote. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess so. But should we wait till we know what happens? But this was a consultant from Minneapolis, as I recall. And my husband and I have been big supporters of the library in the past and remain supporters of the library. And basically, she wanted to know how much can we put you down for. Fortunately, she didn't mention $1 million. I'll
have to call her.
I think it was mentioned, but then she took out the schematic, the picture of the project. Both my husband and I said, wait a minute, I never heard of a civic center. I never heard anything about a high-rise parking garage. I mean, who's not in favor of a great first-class library? We're all in favor of that. But that was the first time, and I tried to pay attention, that I became aware of the scope of this project and why we were talking about $30 million. And I think a lot of the pushback that you're getting from the citizenry is because we feel there has not been full disclosure on what was really going on here. And that, I think, was a big mistake. Of course, Park's a nice place for a library, but that's a site-specific consideration to me. There are plenty of libraries in big urban municipal areas that work there too. So I don't particularly care that sometimes libraries are in a park. What we're talking about is this park and this location and the effect that a high-rise parking garage is going to have on that site. And I have an idea that it may be a done deal. Maybe I'm just too cynical. I don't know if there's any chance of opening the discussion back up to get more citizen input on the location, because I feel that, and I have no clue that this is just a hunch, that the vote for a lot of people was based on incomplete information. People didn't really realize the scope of this. I think aesthetically, it would be great to have a civic center connected to the library rather than talking out of the building there. But that was never part of the discussion that we heard from many months leading up to this. So I'm hoping that the train hasn't gone to devastation, and this is just sort of going through the motions here, and nothing will change. But I think we have underlined way that this was ultimately handled, not the task force. I think the task force did an admirable job, and I appreciate the hard work. But why was there ever any discussion about our lives, our lives, and the civic center? I don't expect you to answer that necessarily, I make an observation. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you tonight. My name is David Aaron. I'm the father of 3 small children, ages 4, 2, and 0. 6 months. My wife and I just did 0. And the library is a wonderful program for children. And in the coming years, my family and I are going to spend a lot of time there. And so my question is on walkability. My wife and I grew up as suburban kids being shuttled in the car from activity to activity. And what we love about Winter Park in the city is it's bikeable and it's walkable. Our goal is the quality of our children's childhood is more of a mission of our parents than ours. You may have heard of the concept of free-range kids. So my question is, with respect to the slide on walkability, the stats are 3/4 of a mile of the current library, 5,000 residents reside, whereas 3/4 of a mile of the proposed location, 7,000 residents reside. Well, so is just from looking at that one slide, one could presume that this new location is better for 2,000 residents, but we're a town of 28,000 residents. So what I would love to see is a slide with a mile and a half, with 2 miles. 2 miles is a 25-minute walk. My family does a 2-mile walk on a regular basis. I just would love to see that slide. I just think it would be really informative, and me personally, I love the downtown core, Farmers Market, Central Park, and we have our Saturday down. And Farmers Market, Central Park, library, that's what we're looking at. So thank you again for tonight. We are a town divided on this topic, and it's the location. $30 million is a big number. I had 15 million stuck in my head for some reason, but I think it's because of the Civic Center and so forth that the projects get bigger. Hey, 30 million, we can do it. But let's get the location right. Thank you.
Well, I always have to be different. I have stood up many times in city meetings, and I'm the only one that talks on the other side. I went to almost every task force meeting and followed the entire path. This was an incredible group of people who came in with different ideas, different thoughts, and they got the professional information from all different kinds of sources, not from the city, not from themselves, but from different types of professionals. They all eventually came to the same conclusion. The location, every location was very, very, very thoroughly evaluated. And personally, my husband and I wanted this location from the beginning. He said, this is the only place that has any logic, because every other location, there was no space. You were going to be landlocked. There was nothing you could do. Having the park, the previous gentleman mentioned about walkability. Well, I'm sorry, the task force quickly evaluated where everybody comes from to the library. Currently, I don't remember the percentage, but it was about 85% drive. With our heat, our rain, our age for most of us here, we aren't going to walk to the library. And I have seen many of the more mature library patrons come out with an armful of books or DVDs, but you're not going to carry another mile or 2 miles. Most people with toddlers and babies aren't going to be walking because that can be pretty stressful. So the process has been very thorough. I will admit that it was the last 2 months of the process when the Civic Center became the issue. One of the commissioners said, wait, if we're going to have a state-of-the-art library, why don't we just incorporate a new Civic Center along with it? And then you'll be state-of-the-art in two different areas. I also agree, I hate to see the Rachel mural come down. It is so functional for our community. But this is not a project for you and me. It's for our kids and our grandchildren in the future. I just got back from traveling up and down the coast on a cruise, being in several different nice towns, and seeing what they have done, then the architecture that they have chosen. And we have this many people that want to participate in building us a new, wow. People think a lot of Winter Park if they want to participate in a program where they're going to listen to us as we tell them what we want our library and civic center to look like. We have an incredible opportunity here to make this what we want it to be. The architect's not going to decide. They're going to give us a bunch of different pictures and ideas. And this Aspen Institute, is that what it's called? I mean, the fact that they want to participate in this project with us, and they are the state-of-the-art library people. I mean, come on, guys. Quit going back and saying, oh, I didn't get my way. There's 30,000 residents. We had 10,000 vote. So that means about 4,500 people voted one way and 5,000 voted another way. That's life. So 2/3 of our community didn't even bother to participate. So let's move forward and enjoy the town.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to apologize because I'm not going to ask a question. I'm going to make a comment. After the vote on the bond issue, speaking to people in the neighborhood and around town, I came to realize that there was not a good understanding of the financial implications to them personally. 30 million is kind of a large number that is difficult to comprehend. And I think once we started talking about it, and people began to realize that that's $1,000 of debt for every man, woman, and child in town, and that over the course of the 30 years, that amounts to about $4,000 for on average, for every homeowner in town. And that those are the kinds of numbers that people really didn't have a good feeling for. And I can understand why they don't, because neither the media nor the meetings, at least the few that I attended, was that kind of discussion, that kind of a transparent discussion really obvious. And also as a part of that, the funding for that bonds is going to come from ad valorem taxes. There is no funding source as we had for the bond issue for the electric department. And also there's some concern that over the past 5 years, we've had a pretty good economic condition in town. And we've done quite well. And I have some concern that we may be overreaching based on our experience in the last few years. And that we may be overreaching in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So my concerns are purely financial. And I hope that as we have future discussion, that impact becomes more transparent on a level that people can truly understand, not just a big bond number. Thank you.
Thanks for having a meeting. My name is Bob Bennett. My wife Jill and I have lived in Winter Park for 20 years. Jill is a very dedicated volunteer at the library, donated to the library. We think a better library is a good thing for Winter Park. It all makes sense. However, a long time ago, I was educated as a city planner and was a city planner for a while. I can't escape that way of thinking. Winter Park is in the midst of a really credible visioning process in which the city is reaching out to its citizens, the diverse board overseeing this. It's a good process to think about the future of the city for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. And it's done an interim report that's quite excellent in defining the values of the city, the goals of the city. The next logical step in that report is to translate it into a revision of the comprehensive plan of the city, which really brings those ideas into some sort of physical reality, representation, what we build, where, and how we do it in order to realize the vision that the people of the city see as our future. My problem is that the library process, deciding the library, was looking internally at what's good for the library and not necessarily about what's good for the library in the context of the city as a whole. And my concerns were more worried when I heard the city commission saying, well, maybe we'll put the city hall in the library, or maybe we'll build a new city hall. It seems to me that these kind of ad hoc decisions, looking at internally at the needs of a library or a city hall without putting them into the framework of the future of the city and the goals of the people of the city, does not make sense. The city is on the right track thinking about its future in a methodical way that involves a broad base of citizens. Why not make the library, and I have to say, even if the site is kept where it is, why not somehow integrate this library process? And we voted against the library because of the location, but even if it's where it is, and even if it goes forward in some fashion the way it is, the city really should be bringing these two strands together. The idea of what facilities it wants or needs to satisfy things, and the vision of the city in a good process, ongoing, going to be done in December or so, which then translates into the comprehensive plan, an element of which is usually a capital improvement plan. It is what city investments and facilities do you need to realize the comprehensive plan and the vision of the city. All of this should fit together, and I don't think the library process was in sync with it, and certainly thinking about what the future use of the existing library or the future of City Hall, all of that should wait and be done in the right way. Thanks.
I'm Gary Barker. I'm a member of the legendary task force. I respect everybody here, some more than others. Some of the things that have been brought up is very frustrating. We had 18 months of meetings, an hour and a half meetings each week that were open to the public. I can look around and point to you guys who were there. We had 4 different public forums. I can honestly point out who was there at those meetings. We had open commission meetings. We had what do you call it? The commission we sit together. Work session. A work session. There's been numerous amounts of information sent out. For those of you who say you didn't know about it, I'm sorry, and I feel bad about that, but you were not an informed voter. There's plenty of information on how much it was going to cost you for $100,000 for this project. We looked at every city-owned property, which is what we were tasked with. We also looked at properties that could possibly be bought. We couldn't talk about it publicly because then the price is going to go up. We looked at everything in the city. If you're talking about keeping it in the core where the city hall is, you're going to have a parking garage there. It's going to be incredibly busy with the traffic in the library there. If we put the library where it is now and did anything to it, we'd have to add a parking garage there. With all due respect to Judge McKinnon, it's not going to be a high-story parking structure. It's going to be one structure underground, another top, and people parking on the top. So 3 levels, but it's not a multi-story parking garage. A lot of the information you're hearing is incorrect. A lot of information that people are asking about and said they haven't heard has been put out there. I can show it to you. Our task force report is about this thick. I'll bet you nobody in here except for us, task force, has read it all, maybe Michael. But that's it. So, I'm a little touchy because we spent a lot of work on this. We were told by lots of people, this is not about me and people in the community. We were told by lots of people in the city, they've never seen the task force work this well together. We had both sides of the aisle. We had fiscal conservatives. We had liberals, social lights, or socialists, I don't know, in the committee. So we had everybody there, and we all came together with the same thing. So, it's a lot of work that we did, and a lot of things you're asking about we addressed, we questioned, and I think that we as a task force did a great job. I think going forward is going well. And I thought tonight was going to be about going forward. I didn't know we're still going to talk about the vote that already happened. Anyway, thanks.
My name is Mary West, and I live on the west side of Very Rock. Me not to speak about the library being put over on the west side. You had other option of where the library should have been put at some of the meetings I have been to. And to involve the city center, the park, putting a library there is very unlikeness to me. And I was never saying, sometimes I agree with him about the I did all agree with him, sometimes I don't, but I think I might agree with him on this one here. And to take him to the library in the park, and you talk about green space over on the south side of town, but you never talk about green space on the west side of Glen Park. Every time we get a little piece of green space, you always want to do construction on to the green space. So I've been here in Glen Park practically all my life. I raised 3 children. I helped raise 9 grandchildren, and I'm in the process of seeing after 20-something great-grand, and then plus I have a great-great-grand. And so west side is for the library to be there. Well, yes, just walking distance. If you read, they can just skip off and jump and get in the library. And there's another thing we talk about. The library is good for the west side because the kids, I see a lot of them walking across Moss Boulevard trying to get to the library, going down Park Avenue. Yeah, let them walk. They need to walk. Let them walk. Okay, so traffic. I live right on the corner, and not on the corner, but my street is right on Dennis. That's a lot of traffic coming in. And the building, we already put a parking garage across from the civic center. Why keep putting parking garage over on the west side? You have one there for the senior citizen building. You have one there for the park, the condos that you just built there. You know the west side of Glen Park is known as the St. Hole project. You keep putting all those parking garages up there and parking cars and running cars up in there. You all are going to look at the library and all these other buildings go underwater. Now that is my saying from day one, because I lived by St. Hole. So to put a library, I have nothing wrong with having a new library, but to put it over on the west side, where you put everything else on the west side, I have a problem. And the green space, the park, this for the park, for people to go and enjoy. I know they said the library, they can sit out there and look at the park from the library. Yeah, good for you all, but not for me and the residents that live over there. That is a big problem. So you can take the library where you have that there, and I've seen you squeeze a lot of little things and a lot of little holes. You can fix it up. So my best bet is to you all is to try to realize it's a resident over on the west side, over here on this side, the west side. Let it stay a resident. don't let everything that you all want to build up 3 or 4 stories come into come into a relevant neighborhood for single family homes and throw up high-rise buildings on the west side. Take the library, leave it where it's at, or take it and put it somewhere else. You did have one space across the street from the park to put it there, but you all refused to get it. You have another spot down where the post office is where it could have been you refused to get that. But, oh, let's go to the west side. Anything you want, let's go to the west side. Leave the west side as a single resident home and stop building 2- and 3-story buildings and rezoning. I know that part has already been rezoned because it's already something there. But coming over here, rezoning from R81 to anything else besides homes, single family homes. So, like I said, I didn't come up here to speak, but I'm not very much talking. I need to have come up here and say something. Thank you.
Well, Sandy Long, everybody knows I was against the library move. I thought the downtown area was great, and I'm certainly against putting a library in a public park. I think it's a slippery slope. And I also want to say, as helping Michael, by the way, thank you for calling this. By helping Michael, 99% of the emails we received were in favor of keeping the library where it is. But let's call that aside. I have a couple questions and requests. I think one thing that upsets people is that we don't really know, we have no clue how big that library will be in that park. I'm making a request tonight for the city to get some tape, yellow tape, and go out there and mark off how big this building will be, and then mark off how big the parking lot will be. And then also hang balloons the height of the parking garage and the building. I think that will, it's either going to shock everyone or it's probably going to calm a lot of people down. I think there was just a lot of information. There was a lack of information, in my opinion. And number 2, I wanted to ask you, I don't think you really answered this question. Is the library going to also operate the Civic Center? How are you going to generate money what will be the, certainly you've got a projection of your annual operating costs. And so will this be a partnership where the library operates the Civic Center and that money goes towards the library operation?
The current point, well, let me address the first issue first. We can certainly do that with balloons, but keep in mind, this building has not been designed yet. We did some preliminary sketches of some options, but and that particular one had 2 separate buildings. It could be one building. It could be one building on one side of the garage and another. It hasn't been designed yet, so it's
but you never provided any size. You could easily.
we provided size.
Relative to the space.
Right. Okay. But all right. So the second.
Is there going to be
the current plan is we will work with the library, but the city will still operate the event center side. The library will operate the library side, and we will jointly share in some of the meeting spaces that are in the library side that the city, and then we'll work together on those. So that's the plan. The operating cost we would expect the operating cost of the event center side to go down. Actually, we don't think it's roughly the same overall size of the building, so we shouldn't need more employees to operate it. We should be more efficient with air conditioning and that type of thing, and lighting and all the modern technologies. So it'll have more rental opportunities because it'll be more modern
Well, what about the library operational costs? Because those will surely go up. Y'all have plans for how you're going to meet?
As we work out what the library will be like, we will be able to flesh out the operational costs. And I would commit to you that we're going to be as transparent about that as we possibly be.
Well, I hope y'all will put together a design or go out there and take it all. I appreciate that.
We're nearing our cut time, but I think we have one more question, or we have two. I just want to keep the comments as brief or questions. Thank you.
Just one question. It seems to me that the people who studied the library did an excellent job. And then all of a sudden, as one of the participants said before, the Civic Center got added on at the last minute. I don't know how many people knew about that. Okay? How many libraries did you study where the library was a secondary structure to something else? And when that happens here, and there's a conflict between a usage of the Civic Center and a usage of the library, who takes precedent? The children or the renters? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Forrest Michael, licensed landscape architect and master planner in the state of Florida. I also help master plan Central Park, and I never have been for the library and Martin Luther King Jr. Park, because that area of Martin Luther King Jr. Park is the passive park area. The active park area is on the other side by the ball fields. So we're basically taking up a lot of the passive park area in Martin Luther King Jr. Park by this proposal. My real point is, I happen to bring my tax statement here. And I don't have a big home, big property, but I do have a property, and I do have an income for something. Randy, this question is to you, my good city manager, and I respect you. But I would like this question answered. Did the city commission ever vote on any of the library sites with a vote, yea or nay, and public comment in that mix?
Yes.
When?
I don't know the date, but the commission decided that it was going to go on that northwest corner of the library, of the Martin Luther King Park, and they voted. It was in November. Well, November is when they approved the ordinance to put it on the ballot, and so
It was part of that.
yeah, it was part of that discussion. So October, November is when they voted to put it on the ballot, and the ordinance itself did not say that's where it was, but it was.
You're talking about the referendum and the ordinance?
Right. It did not identify that as the specific site.
And the referendum never addressed the site?
The referendum did not address the site.
Right.
That's correct. And the commission was clear about that. They talked about that's where it was going. A commissioner made the recommendation that they include that in the question. The concern was that if we got into this testing phase and found out there was a problem, and we already got the referendum approved, and now it specifically said it has to go right there, and then there was a cavity under there that made it financially infeasible, then they couldn't move it. The commission could still move it. I don't want to mislead anybody. They could still put it somewhere else.
So I want to rephrase what I just asked, because I attended a meeting right in there, and I heard one of the commissioners get up and say, hey, I want it on the Civic Center site. And then there was a discussion, October, November, more like November, because it was kind of a real rush from August to the end of November, December, to get the referendum in place legally. So it all happened really fast. But I was there in a meeting where the commissioners were batting around. Mayor Leary actually said, I don't want it there on the corner, it might go somewhere else. And so I remember leaving that meeting really confused.
The preliminary decision was made in June when they sent the task force back and said, we think, the commission said, we don't want it on the northeast corner of Lake Island Park. We like Martin Luther King Jr. Park. We like that park as a site, but we don't want it, we don't want it to take the lake up in the center of the block, and we don't want it on the corner, this other corner. And they sent the task force back to study whether it made sense to do it in conjunction with the Civic Center. So June through November is when that study took place, and then the commission approved the bond referendum based on those facts.
Well, here's my final point. Being a licensed landscape architect, practicing for over 35 years in the state of Florida on parks and recreation projects and around the U.S. too, I am confused. I was confused in October and November when it was all being, and August, when it was all being rushed through. I never ever heard the commission vote and say, I want this site A, or site B, or site C, or site D. And I, for one, as a resident who pays taxes every year, probably for as long as I live, and I heard the lady say that earlier, it really struck home. I'll be paying taxes for as long as I live.
That's 20
Yet,
years.
I did not have the chance to publicly comment on site A, B, C, or D. The task force did, but
I think the commission did too. I mean, they voted for that location. And so I disagree with you.
that's a point of clarification.
November 9th.
November 9th.
That was my question. Thank you.
Thanks for all.
Can I be really fast? I'm Lisa Howey, and I just want to say, so that there's not any perception that the room is here against the library, I am completely excited. I think this is a fantastic project. I think the synergy with the library and the Civic Center is magical. I think the synergy with the library and the Civic Center and the park is magical. I think all the signs that were around town that said library, parking, and events made that part pretty clear to me. I don't know how I was the only person that got this, but I feel completely comfortable with the size, the scope, the placement, the fact that there's a parking garage, the cost to me. My mom voted against it. She's on a fixed income, and I explained the cost to her, and she made a decision that that wasn't what worked for her. I have a 3-month-old grandbaby, and I can't wait to see Lily playing at our fantastic new park-surrounded library. I think when we talk about Save Our Library, the people I went to ask about how to save our library was our librarians, and this is what they wanted to be supported, is something that has been talked about in some way, shape, or form for more than a decade. So the fact that it's a surprise just blows me away. There was a tremendous amount of information. The task force members made themselves available to me. Our commissioners made themselves available to me. And I'm a nobody. So if I could feel this comfortable with the scope, the project, the placement, the cost, I think anyone in the city had the same opportunities. And if we didn't avail ourselves, too bad. Our current new commissioner won by less votes than this library, and nobody's asking him to step down. So this is a go. If it won by 1 vote, it's a go. It's time for us to come together as a community and support this project and make sure that the RFP is fantastic and the design is fantastic. This is a go, and it's a great opportunity for us to come together.
Okay. I want to thank all of you all for coming. Randy, Marina, thank you for joining me, and have a great evening.
Great, Sean. Thank you, Mike.